Welcome back to another week of Tea with the Shepherd. You'll have to pardon me for last week. I was trying to patch up some duct work and just got into my system, and it's been trying to flush out ever since. And of course, I had healed tea for everybody else, but I did not have another batch for myself, and I've been needing to make one. But today, what I do have that I'm drinking is Thinking of You, because this past week, if you saw, we had several releases. We had the Sarah and the Hannah tea as a part of our Whitman of the Bible collection, which I shared about those. But then we also had a surprise release, and it was our Valentine's teas, My Heart, which is awesome too for heart health. It helps to support the heart health, and it's really delicious. And then also Thinking of You, which is also a really good tea. It's fresh and fruity, and it's great for anyone you want to just give it to. But that's what I'm drinking from here, because the verse is Philippians 1:3 on this cup, and it says, "I thank my God every time I remember you." And the person who gave this to me just gives me fond memories, and I just love her. So anyway, I was drinking from here. But now, to get into our study, we are in Hebrews 7, and as I mentioned before, the writer of Hebrews does not really delve into who Melchizedek is in the first part. And while I was studying this, I was thinking there wasn't a whole lot of depth in those first few chapters, and I was trying to find it. And then I realized, no, he's talking to people that don't want meat yet. There's not really any meat to be given at that point because they didn't want it, and he was kind of addressing that. But now we're starting to get into the meat. So he's saying, okay, that's where you are, but I'm not going to leave you here. We're gonna mature you. And again, part of my voice sometimes coming and going. So now he's going to go into, okay, I mentioned Melchizedek. Now let me explain Melchizedek. And he does it much in the same way that we're doing these studies. He's giving the background. He's giving understanding. He's going to go back. He gives more meaning and teaches them, if you're wanting to understand something, you've got to dive a little bit more. And this is how you mature. Exactly how we're doing these videos is, if you want to mature, you don't just read the scripture and move on and check off your box that you've read for the day. Dive in more. And the more you dive in, the more you're mature, the more you understand, the more the Lord can reveal to you. And so that's what the writer of Hebrews is doing. So in chapter 7, verse 1 of Hebrews, and we'll see how much we get through today. This Melchizedek was king of Salem and priest of God Most High. He met Abraham returning from the defeat of the kings and blessed him. And Abraham gave him 1/10 of everything. First, his name means king of righteousness. Then also, king of Salem means king of peace. This is exactly what we do when we're trying to understand the Greek or the Hebrew words. He's giving the meaning and the understanding behind these names, not just saying what their names are. Without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, like the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. So now let's go back to the passage that he's referencing here, and that's in Genesis 14, verse 18 through 20. And I realized in my video last week that I said Genesis 16. I meant Genesis 14. I don't know why I said Genesis 16. Anyway, in Genesis 14, then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." Then Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. Now, Abram meets this king of Salem, after he's had a victory over a confederation of 4 kings. And these kings were from the east. They had attacked Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zebulun, and Bela. Hopefully I'm saying all those right. Now, Lot was taken captive, and this is why Abram goes after them to bring Lot back. So Abram pursues the invaders, and then he wins a victory at night. So after this, Melchizedek meets him as he's returning home, and that's when he blesses him. Now, he's not just a king, but he's also a priest. And he's not just any priest of a false god. He's the priest of God Most High. Now, this is before we have Israel. Israel has not been formed because they haven't come from Abraham yet. Isaac, Jacob haven't been yet. So this is all before any of these covenants have been made for it to be passed down. But yet Melchizedek is a priest of the God Most High. So There's no beginning or end to him, as he says here in this passage. Without father or mother, without genealogy. Nothing is listed for Melchizedek. It seems like he just appears out of nowhere, and he has no beginning of days or end of life. Now, he may very well have, but because he's a picture, a shadow of what's to come, none of this is listed very strategically in the Bible for the Lord to show what he's trying to communicate here. Now, the writer of Hebrews is also going to show in this passage that Jesus is not superior just to the angels, as we talked about last week, but he's also superior to Moses. Now, again, Moses hasn't come yet because the Israelites haven't been born yet. So none of that has happened at this point in time. But he's also showing that Jesus is superior not only to Moses, but to Aaron and the priesthood. So a lot of the Jewish saw, of course, that Moses and Aaron and the priesthood, these were the ultimate, and they were the most superior. But the writer is saying Jesus came, and he's far superior than even them. So therefore, how he lays this out is saying that the priesthood of Jesus was after the order of Melchizedek, because, again, this is before the priesthood has been established. The priesthood is still faulty, as we will go into and understand the further into this discussion that the writer lays out. So Jesus is following the order of Melchizedek, where he's both king and priest, because most of the priests had to come from Levi. Jesus did not come from Levi. He came from Judah, from the tribe of Judah. So it's going to be contrasted very sharply against the Jewish priesthood, which, of course, is after the order of Aaron. But Jesus is eternal, and his sacrifices are his one sacrifice is effective, and it's enough. Whereas the priesthood from Aaron was imperfect, and it was only temporal. It was to foreshadow what was to come, because it was not going to be enough. It was never going to be enough, and that's why they had to keep offering over and over and over. Whereas Jesus's was final. So that priesthood from Aaron would become useless over time once this final sacrifice was made. So there was a weakness in that priesthood because, again, it was imperfect. It was only supposed to be a picture of what would come that would be the complete and perfect sacrifice, which is in Jesus. So this is kind of the context and background he's going into here. So the heritage that's important to Levites was not attached to Melchizedek's priesthood. Again, he doesn't come from that. So the priest's service would end at death, but Melchizedek's doesn't. And this is where, again, we see the picture of Christ. Even though he died, his priesthood didn't end. And of course, then again, he was resurrected. So this is kind of the setting. Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of God Most High. He meets Abraham. It also says in Genesis 14 that he brought bread and wine, which is a symbol of communion. That again is before this Last Supper with Jesus. So he's having this communion with Abram. And he brings peace. And this peace of God is based upon the righteousness of God. So in verse 4, just think how great he was. Even the patriarch Abraham gave him a tenth of the plunder. And this again is before anything has been established, yet Abraham gave him a tenth of the plunder because he recognized there was a superiority in this Melchizedek priestly king. Now the law requires the descendants of Levi who become priests to collect a tenth from the people, that is their brothers, even though their brothers are descended from Abraham. Again, the Levites have not come yet. Now also there was a common practice to give a 10% to the gods, all the false gods. And then as he's mentioning in Numbers 18, the priests were to receive a tithe, that 10%, because they never inherited the land. They didn't get a portion of the promised land. And so that was a way of their inheritance, was 10% of what was from the people. In verse 6, this man, however, did not trace his descent from Levi. Obviously, they haven't been born yet. Yet he collected a tenth from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. So even before this has been established, he still has a tenth from Abraham. God is setting all these shadows up. And without doubt, the lesser person is blessed by the greater. So Abraham is the lesser in this. Melchizedek, this priest, this king, is the greater. In the one case, the tenth is collected by men who die, but in the other case, by him who is declared to be living. One might even say that Levi, who collects the tenth, paid the tenth through Abraham, because when Melchizedek met Abraham, Levi was still in the body of his ancestor. Remember again, he hasn't been born yet, so he's still within to come. Now, just to also clarify, it is not that Jesus is like Melchizedek. It's more that Melchizedek is resembling the Lord. He's foreshadowing the Lord of what is to come, of Jesus, who's going to be our priest and our king. So Melchizedek is demonstrating this just as Jesus does. So as king, he is just. Jesus is just. And as priest, he justifies all who trust his atoning sacrifice. And all of this is being met in this picture. So we're going to pause here, and we will pick up in verse 11 tomorrow.